Beneath the bruised sky where Valoria's twin moons bled a harsh crimson, Nia Emberdawn emerged from the whispering ice caverns, each breath crystallizing into luminescent clouds that drifted across the frozen lake. Her midnight blue cloak, threaded with living starlight, shimmered like a distant galaxy as she stole a glance at the heavens, recalling the songs her brother Corin used to sing beneath this very aurora. Now, that light called her not to celebration but to desperate action. The ember key in her gauntleted hand pulsed with the promise of salvation for her sister Lysa, whose life flickered as faintly as a dying ember in the frost. Love and guilt warred within her chest, guilt for having left her sister vulnerable while pursuing the magic that might save her, and love so fierce it burned away every flicker of doubt. Memories of Corin's final sacrifice surged through Nia's mind. The night he sealed the Tyrant King's magic into a heart of frozen flame, using the Ember Key to bind the Celestial Forge's power and spare countless lives. She could still feel the chill of that ritual, the crackle of forbidden energy, and the sorrow in Corin's eyes as he vanished in the Forge's sealing light. Now, the barrier he created had begun to crack under the Tyrant's relentless will, unleashing corrupted magic that twisted wildlife into monstrous forms and transformed gentle snowfall into razor-sharp storms. Each treacherous gust that buffeted Nia's cloak was a reminder. Time was running out for her sister, and only by reigniting the forge could she restore balance to their dying world. Pressing her palm to the cavern mouth's carved glyphs, ancient, runes sculpted by star sorcerers long forgotten, Nia whispered her brother's true name. The icy wall groaned as the runes flared silver, yielding to her touch and revealing a narrow stair hewn from crystal-clear fey glass. With every step downward, the walls seemed to hum with ancestral power, resonating with her heartbeat as though guiding her toward destiny. Flickers of starlight danced around her boots, illuminating centuries-old inscriptions that spoke of both glory and warning. He who wields the forge must bear the weight of every heart it touches. Nia's jaw set as she descended, steeling herself for the cost she must pay. At the stair's end, the crystal hall unfolded in vast, echoing grandeur, a domed chamber carved from living quartz, its walls alive with cascading opalescent veins that pulsed in rhythm with the forge's heartbeat. Stalactites of pure ice dripped into shimmering puddles that reflected the Bloodstar's glow. In the center stood the celestial forge mounted on a dais of glacial steel, its eternal flame sputtering weakly beneath layers of warded frost. Nia paused, feeling the forge's muted pulse reach into her soul, reminding her of the fragile bond between sisterhood and sacrifice. She inhaled deeply, tasting both fear and determination in the frosted air, and pressed forward. Approaching the forge, Nia studied its frozen runic lattice, an intricate weave of ember magic and starlight script that defied comprehension by lesser mages. Each rune glowed faintly, reacting to her presence. She traced one with a trembling fingertip and felt a spark ignite in her chest. The forge demanded an offering shaped by both sacrifice and compassion, a testament that life's worth outweighed the hunger for power. Steeling her resolve, she placed the ember key into the dais's central slot, its heat searing through layers of ice and ward, sending cracks spidering across the surface like lightning. The chamber trembled as aged magic stirred. A surge of energy roared through Nia's veins, pain lancing through her arms as the ember key's stolen fire entwined with her own life force. Visions flickered at the edge of her consciousness, Lysa's laughter echoing in sunlit fields, Corin's last smile before sacrifice, Nia's own vow to save her family at any cost. When the pain subsided, the runic lattice lay shattered, and the forge's flame burst forth in a torrent of celestial fire, illuminating every quartz facet in brilliant radiance. Yet the moment of triumph was cut short by the shrill alarms that shattered the ancient silence, and Nia knew that her every stolen heartbeat must now fuel her flight. Turning, she bolted for the stairwell, her cloak's starlight threads trailing, ember glow traps that ignited behind her in streaks of rising sparks. Frost guard hounds, creatures twisted by the tyrant's corrupted storm magic, slid into the hall, jaws snapping with crystalline teeth. She spun, thrusting her gauntleted fist forward to hurl a cluster of starfire motes that blossomed into prismatic explosions, each one melting a hound into harmless vapor. Her breath came fast, each exhale scorching the ice beneath her boots. As she dashed back toward the cavern mouth, the forge's rekindled heartbeat thrumming in her chest. Emerging into the frozen forest, Nia pressed onward, guided by the auroras. Wavering ribbons overhead. Snow-laden pines loomed like silent sentinels. Beneath their branches, corrupted wolves lurked, eyes glowing with feral hunger. She raised her hand and cast a ward of ember runes, sending a wave of warmth that banished the wolves' twisted forms into fleeing mist. Each step brought her closer to Frosthaven, where Lysa lay on the brink of death in their family's humble cottage. The weight of the Ember Key grew heavier with each pulse, as if the shining relic bore the hopes of an entire world. At the palisade gates of Frosthaven, guarded by weary veterans in frost-scarred armor, Nia found the village aflame with expectancy. Lanterns glowing with the forge's freed light lined every street, and villagers, farmers, healers, exiles gathered with teary eyes and outstretched hands. Nia stepped forward, the Ember Key's radiance bathing the crowd in warm luminescence. "The Celestial Forge has awakened," she cried, voice strong despite exhaustion. "Let life return to this land." In response, the villagers raised shard-lit torches high, their unified praise echoing into the night. Inside her family's cottage, Nia found Lisa's pale form lying beneath furs heavy with frost. Nia knelt beside her sister, wiping tears from her cheeks with the glowing runes on her gauntlet. "Hold on," she murmured, pressing the Ember Key to Lisa's chest. The shard's flame bled into Lisa's veins in waves of gentle warmth, and color blossomed in her cheeks as her breath steadied. Lisa's eyes fluttered open, clarity replacing fevered delirium. "Na?" she whispered, voice fragile as glass. Relief and sorrow clashed in Nia's heart as she enfolded Lisa in a trembling embrace. The villagers pressed close, offering herbs and warm broth, their gratitude shining brighter than any star. Lisa sat up, fragile but determined, and leaned on her sister's shoulder. "You've done the impossible," she said softly. Nia brushed a stray lock of silver hair from Lisa's brow, smiling through tears. "We did this together," she corrected, her voice thick with emotion. Outside, the aurora danced with renewed brilliance, as if the celestial tapestry rejoiced at Lisa's restored heartbeat. News of the miracle spread swiftly beyond Frosthaven's wooden palisades. Caravan leaders, once fearful of imperial patrols, now pledged their loyalty to Emberdawn's cause. A council formed that night in the village square, where Nia and Lisa sat side by side beneath torches crafted from the forge's fire. Plans were drawn for a march on Valoria, an expedition to shatter the tyrant king's frost-bound grip and secure the forge's future under a new, compassionate reign. As dawn's rose fingers touched the sky, Nia stood at the head of the assembled, villagers and rebels, her cloak's starlight trailing like a comet's tail behind her. Lysa, still weak but resolute, took the other side of her arm. "The path ahead is fraught with danger," Nia proclaimed. "But together, our hearts, like the Ember Key, will unlock freedom for all." A mighty cheer swept through Frosthaven, rising to meet the Bloodstar Aurora's fading glow, a symphony of hope heralding the celestial rebellion's beginning. At dawn's pale light, Nia Emberdawn led the ragged column of Frosthaven's villagers and rebel volunteers toward the mountain, road that wound serpent-like to Valoria's gates. Each traveler bore a shard-lit lantern, their soft glow mingling with the Ember Key's pulse beneath Nia's cloak. Children perched on weary ox-drawn carts cheered as the procession passed, their laughter a balm against the memory of Corin's sacrifice and Lisa's ordeal. Nia glanced at her sister, whose small hand trembled around a shard of the rekindled forge, and felt both fierce protectiveness and mournful anticipation for the trials ahead. As they ascended the ancient pass, the wind sharpened with frost storms, summoned by the tyrant king's frost witches. Ice ravens circled overhead, their cries echoing off the rocky cliffs. Nia raised the Ember Key aloft, its flame flaring to repel the storm's chill. She chanted a stave of protection, weaving ember runes into the swirling winds until the rebels found footholds against the whiteout. At her side, Lysa drew breath. As if iron breathed, her newfound strength buoyed by the forge's warmth. Each step toward Valoria tested body and spirit, yet the promise of ending the tyrant's winter spurred them onward. By midday, they reached Frostspine Pass, where the tyrant's forces had set an ambush. Battalions of frostborn infantry, armed with arc lances of pure ice and mounted frost wolves snarling with feral hunger. Commander Cale Voss, riding a sky ram, emblazoned with the Ember Dawn sigil, wheeled his cavalry to shield the foot soldiers and villagers. Spears of living flame erupted from Nia's gauntlets, carving lanes through the enemy ranks and turning ice into steaming rivulets. Lisa, her first true battle, summoned a shard-forged barrier to protect the wounded. Together, sister and warrior carved a path to safety, the Ember Key's glow guiding every strike. The ambush broken, they pressed on to the foothills where Valoria's outer walls loomed like a frozen dam. Siege engines, icicle catapults, and rune-forged ballistas lined the ramparts, their crews alert for any advance. Nia and Cale conferred beneath a canopy of snow-laden pines as Lisa tended to frostbite wounds. "We must breach the gates before the Archmagus arrives with reinforcements," Nia said, voice hushed but urgent. Cale nodded, deploying his sharpshooters along the ridgeline. The cold air crackled with anticipation as the Ember Key pulsed, in Nia's grasp, ready for the next act of rebellion. At dusk, the rebel host encircled Valoria's main gate. Nia approached under a white flag of parley, the Ember Key gleaming like a warning star. Within the gatehouse, Captain Ilara, an old friend turned imperial bailiff, gaped at Nia's silhouette. Memory of shared childhood summers on the frozen lake flickered behind her stern facade. "Nia, this is treason," Ilara whispered, voice torn. Nia lowered the key but did not relent. "I carry the Forge's heart, and I seek only to free our land from eternal ice." In Ilara's eyes, the conflict of duty and love shone. She gestured to the guards. "Stand down," she murmured, allowing the rebels' entry in stunned silence. Once inside, the rebels moved like a tide through Valoria's polished marble streets, banners of reclaimed flames flapping in the bitter wind. Citizens peered from frost-rimmed windows, uncertain whether to cheer or hide. An elderly weaver nearly collapsed, her tears feathery on her cheeks as she realized the winter's grip would loosen at last. Nia paused to comfort her, placing a shard of reclaimed starfire in the woman's palm. "We return the light to you," she said softly. Such moments of hope rekindled etched themselves into Nia's heart as indelible proof that their cause was just. The rebels converged on the court's outer courtyard, where statues of the tyrant king glowed with enchanted frost. Nia raised the Ember Key, igniting the runic lines that fractured the statues from within. Each statue exploded in shards of ice that blessed the ground with petals of starlight. Shouts of triumph lifted the air as the frozen effigies melted into pools of life-warmer water, symbolizing the end of oppression. The courtyard's fountain, once dry, sprang back to life, crystalline waters dancing toward the sky. From the palaces, ramparts, the tyrant king himself appeared, garbed in robes of living glacier, his crown a twisted lattice of frost. His voice boomed with arrogance. "You dishonor my legacy with your petty rebellion." Nia stepped forward, hand steady on the ember key. "Your legacy is built on fear and suffering. We reclaim the forge for all hearts." The tyrant king sneered and unleashed shards of void frost that snapped through the courtyard like lethal daggers. Nia countered with a sphere of ember runes, each pulse unweaving his perverse magic. The clash of wills erupted into full-scale battle in the palace grounds. Rebel archers fired bolts tipped with starfire, while mages wove melting wards around the imperial pikes. Nia and the Tyrant King dueled at the fountain's edge, their magics colliding in blazing arcs of flame and ice. Each of his strikes chilled her core, but she answered with waves of ember light that seared through his frost-warded armor. The ember key sang in her palm, urging her on. Meanwhile, Lisa led a small contingent into the palace's healing sanctum to rescue political prisoners. Scholars and activists jailed for daring to speak against the regime. The doors resisted, with warded ice, but Lisa placed her hand over her wound-scarred heart, drawing from the forge's compassion spark until the door's ice runes shattered like glass. Inside, she cradled trembling prisoners and led them to safety, every tear of gratitude affirming her place in the rebellion. As the palace walls trembled, Kale and his cavalry circled behind the tyrant's royal guard, cutting off their flanks. Soldiers, once unyielding to imperial command, now lowered their weapons at the sight of Kyle's banner, a sun atop a flame, a promise of a new dawn. They joined the rebels in turning their blades against the Frostkeepers, who remained loyal to the old king, ending their service in moments of mercy and justice. Nia's duel reached a crescendo as frost met flame in a final blinding blast that shattered the Tyrant King's frozen crown. He dropped to one knee, ice shards melting away, revealing a man broken by fear. Nia raised the ember key high and spoke words of mercy. "Your reign ends, but your people may yet heal." With that mercy, she laid aside the key, unraveling its fiery glow to transform the palace's grand hall into a sanctuary of warmth and light. The dawn sun, long obscured by the tyrant's storms, broke through the shattered skylight. Its rays fell on Nia, Lisa, Kale, and the freed people as they gathered in Valoria's heart. Rebels and former guards embraced, their differences melting in shared relief. Nia retrieved a shard of the ember key's broken filaments and plunged it into the palace's central hearth. A wave of starlight fire spread through stone and snow alike, rekindling life throughout the realm. In the newly restored throne room, Nia took her sister's hand, and together they faced the freed citizens. Though the Celestial Forge still required healing, the first steps toward renewal had been taken. Nia's voice rang clear. "Let us rebuild this land with hearts as warm as the stars above." A roar of acceptance met her words, and the people raised shards of starlight in salute. Under the Bloodstar Aurora's fading glow, the celestial rebellion stood victorious, and the future glistened with promise. Valoria's thawed streets glimmered in dawn's golden light, as Nia Emberdawn and Lisa Emberdawn walked hand in hand through the city's central plaza, now free of frost's grip. The embers of the celestial rebellion still smoldered in festive banners and reclaimed fountains of starfire. Every citizen they passed paused to lay petals of crystalline ice. Now, warm and translucent, at their feet a gesture of gratitude and solidarity. Nia's heart soared at the sight. The same people who once cowered beneath endless winter now held their heads high, united by hope, rekindled in their souls. In the newly rebuilt Hall of Hearts, Nia convened the Council of Rebirth, a diverse assembly of former rebels, reformed Frostguard captains, and scholars freed from the tyrant's dungeons. Their charge was monumental: to restore the Celestial Forge with compassion's spark and ensure no ruler could ever again bind magic for tyranny. Lysa, still fragile yet resolute, proposed a covenant of shared stewardship, binding each council member's oath to a shard of the Ember Key itself. When Nia pressed the final fragment into the Frostguard captain Orek's palm, the shard glowed bright, sealing their promise in a pulse that rippled through the forge's light to the furthest provinces. Outside, Kale Voss organized relief efforts across the realm. Caravan trains wound through the valleys, carrying renewed warmth to villages destroyed by frost storms, seed packets infused with starbloom spores, healing salves brewed from molten star iron, and knowledge scrolls teaching villagers to weave ember runes for home protection. Kale rode at the lead of the first caravan, the wind tugging at his banner of flame, as grateful families lined the roads to wave in thanks for the man who had stood by the Star Weaver's side. At Frostspine Pass, where the ambush had nearly broken, their ranks, scouts found the surviving winter wolves, once corrupted by the tyrant's storm magic, wandering, their coats now shimmering with regrown fur threaded in ember light. Lysa personally led a small team to calm the beasts, singing the weaver's lullaby that had lulled her sister to health. The wolves, their eyes soft with remembrance, bowed their heads before bounding off to the high forests, guardians once, more of the mountain realm. Days later, Nia and Lysa visited the Crystal Hall beneath the thawed lake, now repurposed as a sanctuary where villagers came to meditate beneath the forge's gentle glow. Ice stalactites had melted into icicle chandeliers that sparkled like captured galaxies overhead. Children sat on polished fey-glass benches as elders, regaled them with tales of the rebellion's first night, embedding the Ember's legacy in the next generation's dreams. Nia watched as Lysa, her sister reborn, guided a circle of young mages through the first lesson on binding starfire to healing, tears of pride and joy mingling in her eyes. The heart of Valoria's reconstruction lay in the rebuilt library of the Frostbound Archives, where scholars worked side by side to restore tomes lost to the tyrant's purge. Nia donated Corin's personal journal, its pages singed yet legible, bearing the blueprints of the Ember Key's forging and his final thoughts of love for his family. As librarians gingerly transcribed his handwriting, Nia realized that her brother's spirit lived on not only in the forge's flame, but in the hearts of all who cherished freedom. In the village of Frosthaven, the annual winter vigil, once a mournful ceremony of loss, was transformed into the festival of embering light. Lanterns crafted from reclaimed shards floated skyward in swirling patterns designed to honor both Corin and the millions who perished under Frost's tyranny. Lysa led the night's final release, her voice steady as she chanted the hymn of renewal, each note weaving warmth into the frigid air, turning sorrow into celebration. Amid these triumphs, shadows of doubt lingered in Nia's mind. One moonlit night, she climbed the forge's dais alone, letting the Ember Key's final fragment pulse against her pulse. Beneath the swirling aurora, she whispered to Corin's memory, "Have I honored your sacrifice, brother?" The shards responded in soft resonance, as if his spirit answered, "By lighting the way, sister, you have made all hearts burn brighter." The next dawn, Nia rode with Kale to the Council's newly forged ForgeGuard training grounds, where recruits learned to balance cinnamon embers with starlight wards. She watched as novices struggled with fledgling spells, guiding them gently with her own flame-touched hands. Each success and failure etched itself into her understanding that true power lay not in dominance, but in guiding others to kindle their own sparks. In Valoria's marketplace, artisans crafted works reflecting the realm's renewal, stained glass, mosaics depicting the celestial forge's rebirth, tapestries interwoven with ember silk showing the sisters' journey, and wind chimes of star ice that sang soft refrains in the breeze. Nia paused at a sculptor's stall where a delicate statue of two sisters carved in ice stood. One raised a shard of starfire skyward, the other knelt in gratitude. She ran her gloved finger along its curves, a quiet smile overtaking her bruised heart. Meanwhile, Lisa, now fully recovered, established the Hearth of Compassion, a sanctuary where people came to share grief and joy, forging bonds that transcended old divisions. Nia visited to find her sister sitting among refugees and former foes, weaving ember spells of comfort that eased hearts and stitched broken spirits back together. Their reunion in the hearth's warm glow reaffirmed Nia's belief that magic's greatest purpose was mending, not destruction. As winter's thaw gave way to spring's first blooms, the Ember Sisters stood at the foot of the Forge's mountain, leading a pilgrimage of thanks up the frozen path they once braved. Their steps echoed with years of sacrifice and triumph as the crowd ascended behind them, each pilgrim carrying a shard-turned seed destined to sprout under the Forge's restored warmth. The trek symbolized the continual journey of healing, a path often steep but always ascended with hope. At the mountain's summit, Nia raised her arms to the heavens, and Lisa released the final shard of the Ember Key into the Forge's flame. The sacrifice bound the sisters' bloodline to the celestial forge forever, ensuring that compassion and courage would flow through Valoria's veins for generations to come. As the shard melted into pure starlight, the aurora swirled into a kaleidoscope of color, painting the sky in a celebration of life's enduring flame. Days later, the first Council of Harmony convened beneath the Forge's renewed dome. Representatives from every province, guild, and clan pledged to uphold the Ember Oath, to wield magic in service of all hearts, protecting the balance between compassion and power. Nia and Lisa stood side by side as co-guardians of the Forge, their hands joined in solidarity as the Council's verdict was sealed. All life's flame is sacred. In the quiet moments that followed, Nia walked the Forge's perimeter alone, tracing her gloved fingertips along the runes etched in the ice and steel walls. Each rune shone with stories of sacrifice, rebellion, and renewal. She closed her eyes, letting the Forge's gentle hum wash over her, a lullaby for a world reborn. Lisa found her there, offering a simple promise. We face the future together. Nia opened her eyes and smiled, tears of gratitude mingling with Aurora's light. Finally, as the skies of Valoria settled into the first clear night in decades, the Ember Sisters stood atop the Forge's highest turret, gazing at the constellations they had rekindled. Below, the city glowed with the warmth of liberated hearts, a melody of laughter and unity rising on the spring breeze. Nia took Lisa's hand and whispered, "This is only the beginning," her voice a vow carried across starlit skies. Lisa nodded, her eyes reflecting the reborn Aurora. Side by side, they watched the realm they had saved settle into peaceful slumber, the ember flame burning bright in every heart.